Welcome to Photos and Travel, a show that introduces you to fascinating places around the world. Please welcome our host and tour guide, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello and welcome to this episode. Today we're going to explore one of my favorite regions in the world. None other than London and the surrounding area where history knows no bounds. We'll spend the first segment discovering the city of London, and then we'll go on a whirlwind tour of the surrounding countryside. We'll visit Stonehenge, Oxford, Bath, several castles, and many more unique and interesting locales. We'll begin our tour right after these messages.
Thinking apparel such as hats, shirts, jackets, and more? At PP Print, we can help with so much to offer. Just ask, we've got you covered. PP Print, where experience pays off.
Pet Value has a fleet of services to help you and your pet live your very best lives. Visit Pet Value Port Perry for all of your pet's needs. Pet Value, your pet, your store.
London is one of the world's most popular cities, and visiting places like Big Ben and the gardens outside of Buckingham Palace behind me is like stepping back in time. A visit to the Tower of London is a must, and who doesn't want to shop in Soho or on Carnaby Street? We'll go sightseeing from the Eye of London, but first we'll visit my favorite hotel in the area. I've had the pleasure of staying numerous times in Selsdon Park, just outside of Croydon. The original farm in this location dates back to the 800s, but it wasn't until the 1600s when two farms combined and became a large estate. Being only 20 minutes from the home of Anne Boleyn, which we'll visit later, Henry VIII stayed here many times. Selsdon Farm was gentrified into a mansion by 1815. On my third visit, I was offered the room where Henry VIII slept, only to find out it was haunted. There are many significant trees on the estate, one of which I decided to sit under and do some work. I was approached by a caretaker who explained that particular tree was planted by Elizabeth I and I was not allowed to be near it. I'm not sure if he was having me on, but I decided to move back to the patio anyway. One of the most revered elements of the United Kingdom is the royal family, and one of the most visited tourist attractions is Buckingham Palace. The palace is the London residence and administrative headquarters of the monarch of the United Kingdom, and is located in the city of Westminster. The palace is often the center of state occasions and royal hospitality. It has been a focal point for the British people at times of national rejoicing and mourning. Originally known as Buckingham House, the building at the core of today's palace was a large townhouse built for the Duke of Buckingham in 1703, on a site that had been in private ownership for at least 150 years. It was acquired by King George III in 1761 as a private residence for Queen Charlotte, and became known as the Queen's House. During the 19th century, it was enlarged with an addition of 3 wings around a central courtyard. Buckingham Palace became the London residence of the British monarch on the ascension of Queen Victoria to the throne in 1837. The last major structural additions were made in the late 19th century, including the East Front, which contains the well-known balcony on which the British royal family traditionally congregate to meet crowds. A German bomb destroyed the palace chapel during the Second World War, and the Queen's Gallery was built on the site and opened to the public in 1962. The palace has 775 rooms, and the garden is the largest private garden in London. The staterooms used for official and state entertaining are open to the public each year for most of August and September. Located next to Buckingham Palace is famous Hyde Park, a major park in central London and the largest of 4 royal parks that form a chain from the entrance of Kensington Palace through Kensington Gardens and past the main entrance to Buckingham Palace. Here we see the Royal Albert Concert Hall, opened by Queen Victoria in 1871. Famous Tower Bridge, built in 1886, crosses the River Thames, which is known alternatively as the River Isis. It flows through southern England, including London. At 346 kilometers or 215 miles, it is the longest river in England and the second longest in the United Kingdom. It flows through Oxford and Windsor, both of which we'll visit a bit later on. At the turn of the last century, London unveiled a fantastic new landmark, the London or Millennium Eye. Constructed on the south bank of the River Thames, it is Europe's tallest observation wheel and the most popular paid tourist attraction in the United Kingdom, with over 3 million visitors annually. When it opened to the public, it was the world's tallest Ferris wheel, but has since been surpassed by similar wheels in China, Singapore, and Las Vegas. From the observation pods of the London Eye, you have an excellent view of Westminster, including Big Ben and the Parliament buildings. The area, which extends from the River Thames to Oxford Street, has many visitor attractions and historic landmarks, including the Palace of Westminster, Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey, and Westminster Cathedral. It has been the home of England's government continuously since about 1200 CE. The Palace of Westminster serves as the meeting place for both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the two houses of Parliament of the United Kingdom. The site of the Palace of Westminster was strategically important during the Middle Ages, as it was located on the banks of the River Thames, known in medieval times as Thorney Island. The site was where Edward the Confessor built a royal palace in the 11th century. Westminster became the primary residence of the kings of England until a fire destroyed the royal apartments in 1512. It was shortly after that the nearby Palace of Whitehall was established. In 1834, an even greater fire ravaged the rebuilt Houses of Parliament. The tower is nicknamed Big Ben for the great bell of the striking clock at the north end of the Palace of Westminster. The official name of the tower in which Big Ben is located was originally the Clock Tower. It was renamed Elizabeth Tower in 2012 to mark the Diamond Jubilee of Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom. The Palace of Westminster has been part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. The name Westminster originated from the informal description of the Abbey Church, which dates back between the 7th and 10th century. Westminster Palace rose to national prominence when Edward the Confessor rebuilt it in the 11th century. The current Westminster Abbey was started by Henry III in 1245 and is one of the most important Gothic buildings in the country. Westminster Abbey has been the coronation church for the British monarch since 1066. 39 coronations have taken place at Westminster Abbey, with the most recent on June 2, 1953, the coronation for the longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. 17 royal weddings have taken place at Westminster Abbey, with the most recent in 2011 when Prince William married Kate Middleton. Medieval Westminster Abbey contains over 3,300 graves of historical figures, such as 17 British monarchs, including King Henry V and all the Tudors except for Henry VIII. Other notable people buried at Westminster Abbey include Isaac Newton, Edward the Confessor, and Charles Dickens. The best time to visit Westminster Abbey during the week is early in the morning before the crowds descend. Also, because there is so much history, I recommend taking a tour with a qualified and knowledgeable Blue Badge tourist guide. Christianity reached Roman Britain in the 2nd century CE. A number of Roman artifacts have been found in excavations around St. Paul's. However, no evidence has emerged that the site of St. Paul's, as was once believed, was ever used for a Roman temple. The first part of the cathedral was completed in 1148. Up to the Reformation of the Church of England, St. Paul's was a Catholic cathedral. A great deal of public activity also took place, although not always welcomed by those looking after the cathedral. Events such as trade, sports, and ball games were quite common. The reign of Henry VIII saw the beginning of the end for many Roman Catholics. After a brief restoration of Catholic rights under Mary, Protestant worship was finally confirmed under the rule of Elizabeth I. St. Paul's was the first cathedral to be built after the English Reformation in the 16th century. The present cathedral, the masterpiece of Britain's most famous architect Sir Christopher Wren, is at least the fourth to have stood on the site. It was built between 1675 and 1710, after its predecessor was destroyed in the Great Fire of London. The Tower of London, officially named Her Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London, is a historic castle on the north bank of the River Thames in central London. It was founded toward the end of 1066 as part of the Norman conquest. The White Tower, which gives the entire castle its name, was built by William the Conqueror in 1078 and was resented as a symbol of oppression, inflicted upon London by the new ruling elite. The castle was also used as a prison from 1100 to 1952, although that was not its primary purpose. A grand palace early in its history, it served as a royal residence for most of its term. The Tower of London has played a prominent role in English history. It was besieged several times, and controlling it has been important to controlling the country. The tower has served variously as an armory, a treasury, and the home of the crown jewels of England. In the latter half of the 19th century, institutions such as the Royal Mint moved out of the castle, leaving many buildings empty. The tower was restored to what was felt to be its medieval appearance. Despite its enduring reputation as a place of torture and death, popularized by 16th century religious propagandists and 19th century writers, only 7 people, including Anne Boleyn, were executed within the tower before the world wars of the 20th century. Shopping in London is something every visitor has to do at least once. Whether it's purchasing an umbrella from James Smith & Sons, or sampling perfume from Regent Street boutiques. If you're looking for a hat, visit Lock & Company, celebrated as the oldest hat shop in the world. Established in 1676, the unique designs have added character to some of the world's greatest figures, such as Oscar Wilde and Admiral Lord Nelson. Be sure to visit the museum stores or the gift shop at Buckingham Palace, but make sure you leave enough time for shopping excursions at Harrods and Selfridges department stores, where an entire floor is devoted to denim jeans. One of the best-kept secrets in London is Leadenhall Market. It is one of the oldest markets in London, dating from the 14th century, and is located in the historic center of the city's financial district. Trafalgar Square in the city of Westminster was established in the early 19th century around the area formerly known as Charing Cross. The square's name commemorates the Battle of Trafalgar, and Nelson's column still stands in its center. The London Underground is one of the most extensive metro systems in the world. Its origins lie in the Metropolitan Railway, the world's first underground passenger railway, opened in January of 1863. The network has expanded to 11 lines, and in 2018 was used for nearly 1.35 billion passenger journeys. The 11 lines collectively handle up to 5 million passenger journeys every day. London is a fantastic city with more history than anyone can imagine. Visiting Buckingham Palace makes you feel like royalty. And who knew that there were more than 3,300 people buried in Westminster Abbey? I enjoyed strolling through Hyde Park and zipping around the city on the Underground. But most of all, I enjoyed my visit to the Tower of London and seeing history come alive. The area surrounding London is filled with spectacular sights and very interesting places, including a magical paradise. We'll explore them right after these messages.
Hello, I'm Terry Voss from Voss Your Independent Grocer. It's been a year since the pandemic started. I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank all of our customers for their understanding, their loyalty, and their friendliness. I will admit it's been a trying time, but we have come this far only because of you, our valued friends.
Welcome back. As I mentioned, there's much more to southern England than the City of London. Day trips to places like medieval Bath or the university city of Oxford make great excursions. And who can visit the area without walking among the Druids and Stonehenge? In this segment, we'll visit castles and cathedrals and finish up with a very special magical visit to Hogwarts, where we'll sample some butterbeer, walk along Dagon Alley, and try and board a train on platform 9 3/4. That's right, we're going to London's Warner Studios, where the Harry Potter series was filmed. The city of Bath is known for and named after its Roman-built baths. Built on the River Avon, it lies 156 kilometers or 97 miles west of London. In 60 CE, the Romans built baths and a temple in the valley of the River Avon. The abbey was founded in the 7th century and was rebuilt in the 12th and the 16th centuries. In the 17th century, claims were made for the curative properties of water from the springs, and Bath became popular as a spa town in the Georgian era, and in the 18th century, the city became fashionable as the population grew. Even Jane Austen lived in Bath in the early 19th century. The city has up to 1.3 million yearly visitors, making it one of the 10 top cities visited most by overseas tourists. Oxford, a city in central southern England, revolves around its prestigious university, established in the 12th century, making it the oldest university in the English-speaking world. Oxford has a turbulent history. It was first settled by the Anglo-Saxons and was initially known as Oxnaford, which means a river crossing for oxen. In the 10th century, Oxford became an important military frontier town between the kingdoms of Mercia and Wessex, and was raided by the Danes several times. During what is now known as the St. Brice's Day Massacre, ordered by Ethelred the Unready, many Danes were killed. The skeletons of more than 30 suspected victims were unearthed in 2008 during the course of building work at St. John's College. The massacre was a contributing factor to Denmark's invasion of England in 1003 and the sacking of Oxford by the Danes the following year. Of the hundreds of academic houses that sprang up across the city, only St. Edmund's Hall remains. The massive cathedral on the plains of Salisbury was formerly known as the Cathedral Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is an Anglican cathedral regarded as one of the leading examples of early English Gothic architecture. Its main body was completed in 38 years from 1220 to 1258. Since 1561, the cathedral has had the tallest church spire in the United Kingdom at 123 meters or 400 feet. When you're there, be sure to take the tower tour, in which the interior of the hollow spire with its ancient wooden scaffolding can be viewed. The cathedral has the largest cloister and cathedral close in Britain at 32 hectares or 80 acres. It contains a clock which is among the oldest working examples in the world and has the best surviving of the 4 original copies of the Magna Carta. In 2008, the cathedral celebrated its 750th anniversary. Also located in Salisbury are the amazing standing stones known as Stonehenge. This controversial site consists of an outer ring of vertical standing stones, each around 4 meters or 13 feet high and 2 meters or 7 feet wide and weighing around 25 ton. They are topped by connecting horizontal stones. Inside is a ring of smaller blue stones, and inside these are freestanding vertical sarsen stones, joined by 1 lintel. The whole monument, now ruinous, is oriented towards the sunrise of the summer solstice. Archaeologists believe it was constructed from 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE. The surrounding circular earth bank and ditch, which constitute the earliest phase of the monument, have been dated to about 3100 BCE. One of the most famous landmarks in the United Kingdom, Stonehenge is regarded as a British cultural icon. It has been a legally protected ancient monument since 1882, when legislation to protect historic monuments was first successfully introduced in Britain. Stonehenge could have been a burial ground from its earliest beginnings. Deposits containing human bones date from as early as 3000 BCE, when the ditch and the bank were first dug, and continued for at least another 500 years, about 1,000 years before the Druids. I discovered Hever Castle while enjoying some bangers and mash in a small, very old pub. When I learned it was the ancestral home of the Boleyn family, I had to rearrange my schedule and make it part of my itinerary. Spanning more than 700 years, the history of Hever Castle is rich and varied. The original medieval defensive castle with its gatehouse and walled bailey was built in 1270. In the 15th and 16th centuries, it was the home of one of the most powerful families in the country, the Boleyns, who added the Tudor dwelling within the walls. The castle was to become the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, King Henry VIII's second wife, who became Queen of England for just 1,000 days. It was Henry's love for Anne and her insistence that she become his wife rather than his mistress that led the king to renouncing Catholicism and creating the Church of England. Hever Castle later passed into the ownership of another of Henry VIII's wives, Anne of Cleves, and from 1557 onward, it was owned by a number of prominent families. Gradually, it fell into decline before William Waldorf Astor invested time, money, and imagination in restoring the castle. He commissioned the Tudor village, now called the Astor Wing, and the construction of the magnificent Italian gardens and lake. At Hever Castle, his wealth and vision enabled him to create a lavish family home that also indulged his passion for history. I've been to Hampton Court 3 or 4 times, but find it one of those locales where visits just never get tiring. The original Tudor Hampton Court Palace was begun by Cardinal Wolsey in the early 16th century. Surrounded by gorgeous gardens and famous features such as the maze and the Great Vine, the palace has been the setting for many nationally important events. By the 1530s, Henry VIII's Hampton Court was a palace, a hotel, a theater, and a vast leisure complex. The king used it to demonstrate magnificence and power in every possible way through lavish banquets, extravagant court life, and fabulously expensive art. In addition to Henry's state and private apartments where he slept, ate, and relaxed, the palace contained accommodations for courtiers. The style depended on the status of the occupant, but again it was intended to impress. Queen Victoria opened the palace to the public in 1838. It has remained a magnet for millions of visitors, drawn to the grandeur, the fabulous art collection, and the ghosts. Our next stop is the royal residence of Windsor, located about 45 minutes from London. The original castle was built in the 11th century after the Norman invasion of England by William the Conqueror. It has been used by the reigning monarch and is the longest occupied palace in Europe. Originally designed to protect Norman dominance around the outskirts of London and oversee a strategically important part of the River Thames, Windsor Castle was built with 3 wards surrounding a central mound. Gradually replaced with stone fortifications, the castle withstood a prolonged siege during the First Barons' War at the start of the 13th century. Henry III built a luxurious royal palace within the castle, and Edward III went further, rebuilding the palace to make an even grander set of buildings in what would become the most expensive building project of the entire Middle Ages in England. It survived the fire of 1992 and is a popular tourist attraction, a venue for hosting state visits, and the preferred weekend home of Queen Elizabeth II. My last stop on this whirlwind tour of London and surrounding area was a visit to the Warner Brothers studios to see the sets of the famous Harry Potter films. A specially designed coach picks you up at Victoria Station, where you're whisked for a 40-minute drive to number 4 Privet Drive, the Muggle home of Harry Potter. You can explore the room under the stairs where Harry was forced to live. The reproduced life-size Victoria Station, complete with the Hogwarts Express, makes you feel as if you've been whisked into the films, and it's only a matter of time before you step onto platform 9 3/4. As you wander around, you end up in Dagon Alley. Since its construction, walls have shifted, shop fronts have moved, and entire buildings have carefully been tweaked, leaning just slightly to create the street that's seen in the films. The original design of the street combined the rich details from the Harry Potter books with inspiration from the streets described in the works of Charles Dickens. Ollivander's Wand Shop is the home to more than 17,000 individually labeled wand boxes. The classrooms are truly magical, and items such as self-stirring pots do their thing. Over 950 potion jars line the walls of the classroom, each with unique props kept inside them, including baked animal bones from a local butcher shop, dried leaves, herbs and shrunken heads made by the props department. Each jar features a hand-designed label. The home of the Weasley family is unique with its self-knitting feature and costumes worn by the characters. When creating the models of Buckbeak, each feather had to be individually inserted and glued by the creature effects team. The Great Hall serves as a backdrop to some of the film series' most iconic scenes and was used as a key set for 6 more films. As spectacular as the sets are, nothing compares to the detail of Hogwarts Castle, the jewel in the crown of the art department. The models' every courtyard, tower, and turret were filmed and enhanced with digital effects to create an unforgettably realistic view of the magical school. A team of 86 artists and crew members made Hogwarts appear even more realistic by rebuilding miniature versions of courtyards from locations where scenes of the film were shot. The Hogwarts landscape was inspired by the Highlands of Scotland, including the regions of Glen Nevis, Glencoe, and Glenfinnan seen behind me. And I can only imagine how intricate and time-consuming making the films was. Sadly, that brings our tour of southern England to an end. Visiting London was fantastic, and seeing sights such as Stonehenge, Hampton Court, and the cities of Oxford and Bath was educational and interesting. For Photos and Travel, I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen. It's been my pleasure to be your tour guide today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. If you like this program, please click the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode.
Want to know what's happening in Skugog? News and lifestyle, changes in business, and all the entertainment information you'll ever need. Plus, each edition has a new Photos and Travel article. Look for your next copy in your mailbox.
At thestandardnewspaper.ca, we try to show you the lighter side of our community workers and shed some light into their work in our community. With human interest stories on how the community gives back and reporting on legislation which affect us all, the Standard News is raising the standard in your community.